leave with wisdom nuggets that can guide their financial stewardship as it relates to being co-creators with God in the area of economic resources, more specifically tithing, taxes, investments, and consumption. All are to be used for your glory and for your kingdom. Amen. Tonight we want to acknowledge each and every one of you joining us and everyone watching via Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to share the link so that as many people as possible can share in our discussions tonight and learn more about their finances from a kingdom perspective. We'd also like to encourage your participation through the chat. Use the emojis, comment, express concerns, ask questions, so that our panelists may address as many of your concerns as possible. So tonight, our key topics are consumption, investment, taxes, and stewardship, all of which reflect our quality of life. Tonight, we want to specify our discussions around budgeting, building financial wealth, investment, entrepreneurship, and savings with some of our specialists in these respective fields. So before we advance the discussion, I'd like to give our panelists this evening, Sheena Bowen, Wesley Martelli, Aisha Meacock, and Patrick Moore, a moment to introduce themselves and make an opening statement about finances. We'll start with you, Sheena.
Hey, good night, everyone. My name is Sheena Boyne, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. My opening statement with regards to financing is you need to know your numbers.
Hi, I'm Patrick Moore. I'm a financial services professional with over, oh Lord, the years of escaping me, about 38 years of experience in financial services, ranging from banking to finance, to health and general and life insurance. My main thing about managing our wealth is that we should always avoid being caught up in the love of money, and remember that money is basically another resource that we're supposed to first and foremost always keep in mind how best we can serve God, and then following on from that, make sure that we provide for our families. So I take my job very seriously in trying to help my clients achieve those goals.
Hi, good night, everyone. My name is Wesley Martelli. I'm the entrepreneur in the group, and I'm going to give you guys a perspective from an entrepreneurial perspective. My take on money. Money is a tool, and as such, if you have a tool, the tool needs to be used. And so when you have money, you need to make sure that you use your money wisely so that that money is working for you and not that you're in a position where you're always working for money.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's a privilege to be here on this panel. My name is Aisha Meacock. I have been at my financial institution for about 16 years. I manage corporate loans, which is for small businesses and medium-sized, large businesses as well. And I also manage our stock brokerage department. And tonight we're getting very serious. I had to bring out the glasses and the pen, so because we're talking about money. There's a serious issue here. Let's get down to brass tacks. But my opening take on money is God, the Lord knew that we would struggle with money. That's why He has so many verses about it. But there's a cost to living. We're here at the church with the lights on. There's a cost for that. You're on YouTube and Facebook. You have to pay for Wi-Fi. You have to pay for the TV that you're on. So money is very crucial because it's a medium of exchange for how we live. Thank you.
So Aisha and Patrick, I love what you guys said. People always want more money. We always hear sayings like, there's more month at the end of the money. You never have more money at the end of the month. Or, just after Christmas when January is here, we say it's the only month with like 365 days in it. Or people will joke and say, I look at my wallet and my bank account and it's like an onion. It always makes me cry. And, not in a good way. Things about money. You hear that the more money you have, the more problems you see. Interesting.
Yeah.
One quote comes from the Bible, in Ecclesiastes 10. It says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. And this too is meaningless. So what that verse suggests to me is that perhaps our cliches about money are reflecting an unsuitable approach to wealth, and that perhaps perhaps Jesus' heart for us as it relates to money goes beyond tithing and offering, which is where we tend to hear thoughts about money most popularly. So my question to you guys, what is our obsession with money? Why do people, whether they're rich or fiscally challenged, always have money problems? Patrick, let me come to you first.
As you rightly pointed out by quoting that verse from Ecclesiastes, which is actually Ecclesiastes 5:10, when you love money, then you're never satisfied with it. So the perspective that you hold for money will determine how you think of money. It will determine how much of your effort, how much of your time that you will invest in trying to go after money. And if you have the incorrect perspective on money, you will actually value money more than your fellow image bearers of God. So you will be willing to step on, step over, step through other persons in the pursuit of money. And as you would understand, as Christians, we would understand that that's not what we're called to do. So having a correct perspective on money and how much effort we're supposed to expend in achieving or trying to earn money, or as we like to say, to build wealth, that will determine how we go after it and also determine how we interact with each other in trying to pursue that.
Yes, I am definitely in agreement. Not having money, the Bible says the love of money, but I also believe the lack of money creates a lot of problems, definitely as it relates to crime. But loving it also more than, as Patrick said, than your fellow man can create many problems as well. And this is the reason why God calls us to become good stewards of what he has entrusted us with.
I want to echo what Patrick and Aisha have said. Another scripture that comes to my mind is also from Ecclesiastes chapter 10, where it says, money answereth all things. You know, and everything that we want to do in life physically is going to require money. And sometimes we think that the more money we have, the better off we'll be, the happier we'll be, the more successful in life we'll be. But that is not necessarily the case, as you pointed out, Aisha. So definitely, everyone wants to be in a great position when it comes to money, but even though money will help you to get what you need, it doesn't fulfill that longing in your soul, which is what is ultimately important for humans.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. You know, I want to continue with the context in which we're going to discuss this tonight. Not everyone who's on the call might be a Christian, but it's important for us to understand as believers, as disciples, the way in which money is to be used. And so in the Bible, there are over 50 verses that deal with money. Yet people seem generally averse to speaking about money and wealth in a positive way for whatever reason. I don't know if it's maybe a fear of teaching a prosperity gospel and taking it away from being pious, etc. But the reality is, though, God's desire is for us to be blessed. He gives us instruction on how to acquire, distribute, and sustain wealth. And so I like the fact that you guys identified some of the common misconceptions we have about money, finances, and debt. I want to pose another question. As Christians, what should be our approach to money and wealth management? And Patrick, I'm going to come back to you again as a financial services certified advisor. What should be our approach to money and wealth management? And the second question, I'm going to ask Aisha, and then everyone can join the discussion. Is there a difference to how the world approaches finances and what the church is called to do with individual and collective wealth?
Okay, so as a Christian, how we should view money and consider the use of it is basically to look at it just as we look at any other blessing which the Lord has given us, whether it is the bodies that we have. So the same way we should be prudent about how we care for our bodies, what we put into our bodies, and recognize that our health is not guaranteed. We can't say, well, I know for sure I'm going to have X amount of years pain-free and health and injury-free and illness-free in this body. So therefore, we should manage it carefully and prudently It's the same thing with the wealth that God gives us the ability to earn. We should recognize that, you know what? Just as we're called to try and consider our bodies a holy temple that we offer it to him as a sacrifice, as a holy sacrifice, we should look to make sure that we honor God with our money. We should also look to, so that means not necessarily just the offerings and the tithes we give at church, but there are countless scriptures that tell us about looking out for the poor. We even promise that when we look out for the poor and so on, meaning that we give to those, if we are able to give, that we would get reward and so on. So not saying that we're supposed to give in order to get reward, but recognize that we glorify our God by doing that. So in order to be able to know, okay, I have enough to give to this person, that means you have to budget, that you have to know how much money you have. You have to be prudent in managing your money. So if you do that, then you put yourself in a position to be able to have to give to someone else. There's a scripture that talks about the fact that, this is in the New Testament, where Paul is telling one of the churches that those persons who used to steal, used to do underhanded things, go and work diligently, find an honest labor to do, so that you will have enough to be able to give to those in need. So, like I said earlier, yes, you look to do those things. You look to contribute to your church or whatever, if you're a Christian and you're with a body that you are affiliated with. But then you also have to look to, you should be always willing, have that heart to be able to help those who are that are not as well off as you. But once again, too, what you always have to remember, your main responsibility is also to make sure you take care of your family as well, too. So in order to do all those things with the income that God allows you to earn, then you have to sit down and actually make sure that you basically know your flocks, know how much money you have, manage it properly, and then put yourself in a position to be able to do those things.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely I'm in agreement, Patrick. One of the things is that when we talk about money, is that not everyone is struggling. We can't paint everyone with the same brush. A lot of people think that everyone is below the poverty line, and from persons in this church, I can definitely tell you that that is not the case. We are just as different as we have different abilities and skills as we are with our financial situation. So the picture is not the same for everyone. What we must remember, though, is that for us as Christians, is that God teaches us to be content with what we have and not necessarily to be a paper chaser. The world teaches us to accumulate things, accumulate wealth. You always have to have the house, the car, the house with the picket fence and the red barn door, and the swing also when you get tired. And then also you have to have the perfect children. You have to have a perfect life, and you have to have 3, 4, 5 Bentleys. And if you have a plane, oh my goodness, you're a baller. But the Bible teaches us to be content with what we have. And COVID definitely taught us that we can live on less, and how we can live on less. So the Word of God teaches us that even with the church, how to manage our collective and individual wealth is very critical, because oftentimes when we talk about debt, we often think it's a loan at a financial institution, a credit card or whatever, but everything is a debt. Your phone bill is a debt. Your land tax bill is a debt. Your water bill is a debt. Your insurance payments, your gas bill, those are debts too. And the Bible teaches us as Christians to make sure that we honor our debts. Pay who you owe and vow what you vow. All contracts in life must be honored. Thanks.
Wesley or Sheena, do you guys want to weigh in? Do you want to talk about our finances? And I love that you both clarified that our finances have to be used beyond meeting our needs and wants. We don't just work for money to satisfy our needs and wants. You know, I feel like we're talking about marketing, satisfying the needs and wants of consumers. It's to be used in the kingdom as well, and to help others. So, Wesley, do you say anything on how we should approach money, finances, and debt, or should we just go into our 9 to 5 versus entrepreneurial pursuits?
Well, let me just chime in on what Patrick had said. What I believe is key for us as kingdom citizens is to recognize that we are bought with a price. We are not our own, right? So therefore, if we are not our own, nothing that we own is ours. And a lot of people think, I get paid, there's my money, I can give this to the church, or I can give this to savings. But at the end of the day, what God really wants us to do as good stewards of our finances or good stewards of what we have is to seek Him first, seek what is His idea on what we should do, seek where He thinks we should put our money, who He thinks we should give anything to, if we need to give anything, you know, because sometimes some Christians have the belief that we need to be poor, you know, and then there's the opposite side where some think that we need to be blessed and we need to be rich. So I don't think either one of those is correct. I think what is correct is to seek God first and know what His plans for the resources are. And that's how we should manage it.
Yes.
I agree. I agree with everyone. The points everyone has made, and especially when it comes to the extremes in terms of what persons may think in terms of what Christianity looks like when it comes to money, either being extremely poor or being at the other end, so you're flossing or you're balling. The resources that God gives us are to use not only for us to take care of us, but to help others. He always talks about, if it is that you take care of the poor, if you take care of the widow, you take care of the orphan. He also takes into consideration in terms of putting things in place. If you look at even when, I go back to my kids' stories, with Joseph, when AC gave that perspective in terms of the 7 lean and the 7 bountiful, planning had to go in that, and there had to be some sort of money exchange, because there had to be labor, all sort of things to pay the persons. Granted, they had slaves, yeah, but we working with some sort of exchange still had to happen in terms of the getting grain and so forth, in terms of putting things in place for when it would have been a lean time. And that's what we should do, because when we are blessed, we are given, when we're blessed with our funds, whether it be from work, if it is that we have additional income, it is a matter of using it to the best of our ability, and not only for us in terms of us, our immediate needs, but look in terms of generations, and then how we can help assist others.
Yep.
Yeah.
Worker, and Wesley, who is an entrepreneur. So Wesley, you're not the typical 9 to 5er. Why entrepreneurship? How do you manage entrepreneurship? And in your experience, what financial considerations do you have to consider as opposed to maybe your 9 to 5 colleagues?
Well, you say I'm not 9 to 5, but some days I'm 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. Straight
Yes.
through the night, depending on what the job requires. But yeah, I think that for somebody who's in a 9 to 5 job, that person is thinking mainly of having financial stability for themselves and for their family and for immediate surroundings, like their home, car, that sort of stuff. But for somebody who's an entrepreneur, then the financial considerations change slightly, because now you're thinking, yes, of yourself and your family, but then you also have to think of your business, because your business is an entity of its own, in its own self. So now you have to plan for your business, and you have to make sure that your business is making the numbers, it's doing whatever it needs to do so that it survives. And outside of that, when you have employees, then you're considering your employees as well. So there's so much that you have to think of in terms of your finances. You also have to plan for taxes, and if you are in a field that has inventory, you need to plan your inventory too. So you don't have inventory that's sitting down for years and not being used, and then you have to sell it off for less than you bought it for, and you end up at a loss. So there's so much more as an entrepreneur that you have to think of versus a 9 to 5 person. 9 to 5 gives great security. Entrepreneurship, if it's working well, it can also give that security.
What are some of the considerations you make as a 9 to 5 employee?
We didn't hear who you asked, Sasha.
As you.
That was
Can you still hear me? Am I still on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
That's still you, Wesley.
Okay, no, I was asking Sheena, what are some of the major concerns or considerations as a 9 to 5 employee when you listen to Wesley speaking? Do you have any?
Okay, for based from what Wesley would said, that in terms of being the security, that would have been as we advance and go forward, and just looking at the economy, that security in terms of a 9 to 5 is not what it used to be when persons used to sit in a job for 20 and 30 years. If one thing COVID has shown is that what you think is secure isn't as secure as you would have thought it would have been. And that's why you would have even seen like the bursting of all these side hustles. Side hustles now end up being main things that are having to supplement income. Because like for persons who are working in the hotel sector and those others in the tourism sector who would have been definitely impacted by when our borders are closed and with our visitors not coming in as such, they now have to find another way in terms of supporting their family. And not even in terms of like lavish things. I mean, simple things like being able to pay as Aisha said, the light bill, the water bill, make sure that there is food, and then so 9 to 5 was not as secure as it used to be in terms of our parents' time and our grandparents' time. It's a different environment.
Okay, thank you, Shinon. Meat of the matter, as Aisha said, we want to get down to the brass tacks. So Aisha, I'm coming to you. As a manager in corporate finance and stock brokerage, is there a difference in the challenges you see your small business clients versus 9 to 5 employees? And if so, can you share a few of them with us and what advice you give that might be between the two in terms of seeking to build financial credibility for your systems?
Yes, thank you, Sasha. We do have a number of small businesses, even here in the church, and they are thriving. But there definitely are some challenges that we see from where I sit on a day-to-day. And the first one of these, I will share 3 with you. The first of these is that there's often a lack of structure in a small business. When you think of the studies in school, there's no study that really tells you about how to run a business. There's principles of business, there's principles of accounts, but there's nothing that teaches you how to run a small business. Yet you often hear the push to become an entrepreneur, especially when you leave school. So a lot of persons leave school with this, I ain't working for nobody mentality, but they actually do not know how. And I believe that they have these great gifts and talents as co-creators, but they have no idea how to run a business. So the first thing is that there's a lack of structure. The second thing is the keeping of good financial records. When you have a 9-to-5 employee, it is often easy to produce a job letter and 2 pay slips, so you can actually prove income. But when you are a small business, it is often difficult because persons do not necessarily keep good financial records, especially if they are in a cash business. They use the cash to pay the gas, to pay the workmen that came to the house, to go buy groceries, to go buy the Xbox, you know. They use the cash, and there's no receipt, there's no invoice, there's no anything. So it is very, very hard to say, but this is exactly how much you make. And we often have to tell persons, deposit that money into your bank. We're not checking to see how much savings you have. We're just checking to see that the deposits add up to what you say that you make. So good financial records are often a very serious challenge with small businesses. And I do not want persons to think that this is just for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses. They all struggle with keeping good financial records. And this is something that we have to get away from as a society, and not just as Christian and in the kingdom. We have to get away from not keeping good records on what's going on in our business, because oftentimes people think that when they get money, it's all profit. It isn't. There are bills to be paid. You're not rich. You have expenses. And the third thing is that most small businesses operate in what we call the informal business sector. That is, they don't pay national insurance, they don't pay income taxes, so they operate outside of the formal structure that the government has put in place. So that presents 2 problems. One, when you stop working, there's no national insurance that you can get as a pension, a contributory pension or non-contributory pension, as we would say. And then secondly, as COVID presented itself, small businesses who were within the government system were able to capitalize on a number of initiatives that the government had so that you can get something while you were not working. But persons often operate outside of the outside of the business structure and then complain that the government is not doing enough. So we have to be careful and watch those three things. Get a good structure for your business, keep good financial records, and pay to Caesar what is due to Caesar.
Patrick, I want to come to you because when we were prepping for this session, you had actually given us a good example about, some professions who operate within the business structure but don't necessarily see themselves as business. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. About 7 years ago, one of my clients who is a medical professional, during the time that we were having the discussion, the initial interview, he basically surprised me because I had never thought about this. This is a doctor, as I said, a medical professional, and he studied for many years to become qualified. And we all think of doctors, we know doctors who have their private practices, they're very successful and so on. And we assume that they would have gotten some sort of measure of training towards knowing how to manage their business and manage their practice, the business end of the practice. And I was very surprised when I was sitting down and going through the basics of financial plan and so on. He was at a loss. He was telling me this is information he was hearing for the first time. And he confessed that in his studies and his training to become a doctor, they never got any economic or financial advice or training so that it will put them in a position that they could step out and automatically be in a position to start to run a practice, which I think is where you find not only here in Barbados, but worldwide, a high percentage of doctors actually end up working in hospitals or by extension National Health Service in England or here for the basically under the Ministry of Health in the QEH and other medical facilities. So this is endemic. This is not only for doctors. Basically, all children, unless they go to a tertiary organization and then they go into the financial field, and then even then, they usually tend to go into the academic side of it. Our education system does not really prepare persons to become entrepreneurs, per se, as Aisha pointed out. You come out and you have this thing, I don't want to work for anybody, but your education basically prep you to be the perfect employee. And to be honest, it's not everybody that is suited to run a business. As Wesley pointed out, when you decide you want to run a business, it is like a child. And a child that never reaches maturity that you can say, well, good, I can kick them out of the house. No. No, for as long as you run that business, you have to pour your blood, sweat, and tears into that business to make sure that it's running well and everything. And you have to plan accordingly. And surprisingly, a lot of the basic principles that Aisha outlined about what you have to consider when you want to run your business, once again, and this is going to be a theme with me, you're going to find that a lot of those basic tenets are found in the scriptures. Right? So I hope that answers your question, Sasha.
It most definitely does. And what I love about this, Patrick, is that you always bring it back to this good book. Yeah. We tend to look outside of the church for teachings on financial prudence, etc. But it is true what you said. A lot of the principles by how the world operates, at least in terms of finances and business acumen, are biblical principles. And so what we need to do is reclaim those principles and ensure that we are thriving in the church and that we share that information with others. So it's timely discussion that we're having tonight. So Sheena, I want to come back to you, and I want to go to the concept of budgeting and saving. You made a joke when we were prepping saying anybody can save, like anybody can sing, and a lot of people are going to look at that and say, but I make $1,200 a month, and at the end of the month, before that check has come to me, it has already been spent. Is saving different for individuals and enterprises? And what advice would you give us about budgeting and saving?
Okay. Saving is something that I've always been passionate about from the time I was younger. In terms of if anybody gave me anything, I was like, okay, I can do what I can do now, and then I can put aside for something for later, especially since my birthday is in December. So then it's like you're saving to put things aside for when you want to do these celebrations. I got a whole 12 months to wait for birthday. Yes. So for persons, it's a matter of putting aside whatever it is that you can. Some persons think that they have to put aside $100 a month. Some may think that they have to put aside $200 a month. Sometimes it is simple as putting aside. If it is all you can put aside is your change and your $2 inside of a jar, put it in the jar. We did that. My husband and I did that, and we ended up a couple of years ago being able to go to two events: Beijing Fusion. We did archery, and we did Mahalia's Corner. And that was just saving change and $2 bills for the entire year. So if you any little you've got, you're able to put aside. I've listened to my grandmother and the older ones talk about when they used to work for dollars. I mean, like $5 and all these like things that we were like $5. Well, you could buy you $5 now. And they said, and she can say how she put aside this amount of cents. She still fed. They still fed all the children they had to feed. It wasn't the 1 or 2 or the 1.5 that according to our demographics now. The 8, 9, and 15. They put aside this little bit, these cents, and they added up. They were able to purchase homes, and all of these things were putting money aside. So it is a matter of what your thoughts are towards saving and your mindset. And it's even if you put a little aside, person will say, "But I don't have it." If it is that you don't have it, well then look in terms of trying to spend less. How can you put things in place so you can then be able to put something aside? If it is that it's only $1,200 that you have, you may be able then to plant something in your kitchen garden. So then you've got cucumbers and your neighbor got sweet potatoes. We exchange them. So then you'll be able to exchange that. So that's what we're missing for the sauce. Then the other neighbor, somebody may got some pigs. Somebody down the gap got some breadfruit. I mean, Saturday is lit. It's just a matter of looking at what you have, your resources you have, and pull them together. Yeah. For even, I'll give an example. Recently, my friend would have gone to Hanshaw because we were cutting down on the amount of shopping and so forth that we do. She went to Hanshaw and we wanted pineapples, but it was this big 6-pound tin of pineapples. We were like, we can do with 6 pounds. So she bought it, we split it. So then the pineapple rings inside the freezer. So you got pizza, you got smoothies, all sorts of things, because then on a general, nobody's going to spend $22 or whatever in a tin of pineapples. But if you split it, that's like $11. And a normal size pineapple you're going to get for what, like $12. So we already have more than 2 pineapples in the freezer. Yep. And then it's not going to spoil. And it's just in terms of being practical, in terms of how the money is spent and what it is. And my opening statement was that you need to know your numbers. If you don't know how much you're making, what is coming out, how much your different things are, it's going to take you a time in terms of catching if anything goes awry. If it is that you get paid too much or you get too little if you don't know your numbers. So it's long in terms of collecting the error. If you know your numbers, then you know what it is that you're working with, what you can put aside to cover the insurances, because then you got your life, you got your medical, you got your pension. If it's you don't have them as yet, you can plan towards getting them. Because everybody doesn't have it at first. Because somebody would say you quit the city 95%. But then for the entrepreneur, I'm like, you got to try to put it aside, because then when you don't work, unless you have employees, there's no money to be had. So you have to put things in place. For instance, when you don't work, and as Leslie would have said, put your money to work for you. Yep. In terms of putting it in that way. What else we can do in terms of putting aside some money? You can do in terms of research your interest rates, what you can get in terms of savings, so you can maximize the benefits you get on your savings. Savings rates right now are pretty low, because somebody want to give you a cent for every dollar, and ain't that much. So then you got to look and see if somebody can actually give you a little 5 cents, a little 60 cents. Mm-hmm. Or you just put it in something that would have a higher interest earning. Sometimes those are accounts that you don't have access to, so they force you to save. Somebody without an ATM card, and something that may have that you can't withdraw. So there are different options. The thing is, do your research. If you've got a mission, a goal, do your research. There are a lot of persons on IG, there are persons on Facebook. Join a group. Everybody's in new rage in terms of being debt free. The Bible says if you're a slave to the debtor. If it is you already got debt, well then let's work to get out of it. If it is that you have something you want to achieve and that is your choice, manage it. Don't be overwhelmed by it. So it's just a matter of having frank conversations, because I find that we don't talk about money. Nobody's doing like how much money you've made. Da, da, da. You don't have that conversation. You don't need to know how much I make in terms of like I make X amount of dollars, but it's like this is what we're trying to achieve. Aisha, you want to go to Dubai? What?
Yes.
I like so have the conversation. All right, it may not even be Dubai. It's like, do you want to do a staycation this year? How do you do it? How do you put aside for it? It's something a staycation can be as simple as like $25 or $50 a month. But if you plan it, you can achieve it, and that's it in terms of knowing your numbers. I can shut it because I can keep on going and going and going.
And what is so interesting is like I could hear Wesley there saying, yeah, like preach it, just preach it. So what I'm just gonna say, based on what you said, we need to change our mindsets. We need to reclaim some of the practices that worked in the old time days, and we need to speak about money. And when you said speak about money, again, going back to the biblical principles that Patrick always likes to link his teachings to, it's the whole concept of gain, right? And in finances or in school, we hear about vision, mission, goals, and objectives. And so what I hear you saying to me, if you want to save, you have to make it plain. You have to work towards a goal. You have to put it down, whether it's money for children, whether it's a vacation. Do you really need to take out that higher purchase for the Xbox, or you just put it in the credit union without that card? And I love it. I'm going to come back to you, Sheena. So you're going to talk some more, I'm sorry, about, again, 9 to 5 and entrepreneurs. What advice would you give us in terms of increasing our income? If I say to you, I only have $1,200 a month, we're just going to stick with that figure. I can't spend less per se, because the majority of these things, the majority of my money is going into paying bills or paying for items for my children for school. I have just that one savings account at the credit union, and then I have nothing left. One of the things you had said is that, spend less or increase your income. How do we do that?
The increase in your income, again, back to one of the stories from my kids. What did the lady have in her cupboard? She had some oil. What do you have in your cupboard? What do you have home? What skill do you have? What is it that you can do that someone is willing to be able to benefit for, and it has a price tag attached to it? They've got persons who are gifted in hair. You ever see Aisha hairdresser? Gifted in hair. Yeah? Yeah, always on point. Well, it be braiding, well, it be cutting. There are persons who are good at baking. There are persons who, like, everybody's on the healthier eating lifestyle, and somebody may not base, like Wesley. If Wesley is going all the time and he's an entrepreneur, he's at 9 to 5. His wife is also busy and going, and they've got their little girl. I know she'd be great for somebody to do some meal prep for her. So she ain't gonna spend the hours cutting up the vegetables. So every week, if you got an arrangement, you bring the vegetables, and it could be a small price attached to it, or it could be a bartering. If it is that, then you've got your internet issues or your computer issues or your security issues, talk to Wesley. So Wesley would then be able to sort you out, and then they've got the whole meal prep done in order, and the little one gets something healthy, and they got something healthy as well. So look at what your skills are. Look at what you can, let me say, legally exchange for.
Legally is right.
Let's keep it all above board. Above board, legally and scriptural, in terms of what it is that you can do from that. For the entrepreneur, you're saving. Persons may say, I got somebody who's to tell me all the time, Ms. Boeing, I just put the money right back into the business. So everything he gets, he puts right back in the business. And my thing to him always was, what happens if you cannot work? What happens if something goes awry with one of your transactions? How are you going to be able to pay your basic bills? How are you going to have food? That is what I was saying in terms of entrepreneur. Make sure you put aside something for a rainy day. Sometimes, and then, as I'm sure Wesley could probably attest, as with a 9 to 5, sometimes when the rain start to fall, a whole set that's come down, it's be a thunder shower, it's be a flood, and you be like, what happened? If it is that you have something set aside, it makes you able to sleep better, and then it makes you able to do even perform better. So if it is that you've got a month in terms of entrepreneur that's not the best, but you know you still got money that can cover an extra month of bills, you ain't going full scale panic because you know you've got something put aside. For the person who's 9 to 5, if it is that they've reduced your hours, and they're saying that with the reduced hours, they've got to cut your salary. If you've got something put aside, then you know you can fall back on it. If it is that you, like me, you got a couple of greens in the backyard, so if anything happened, I know I could eat salad. I literally tell somebody, I got a salad that I could probably go a whole week with just eating some salad. Salad and a tin of tuna, and we good to go. I mean, some of you like, how you mean? But it is nourishing. You've got all the nutrients, everything you need in terms of your various greens, especially if you got a carrot or some beets and then you could throw inside of it. Yes. And you got the tuna, because then we still in terms of COVID and prepping, it may not be able to afford the chicken or eat chicken every day. Some people will tell you that it's not advisable to eat meat every day, and you've got something there. So that's what I would say in terms of putting things aside and saving for the 9 to 5, and even for those who are entrepreneurs.
Yeah, something you said there, Sheena, about making more money reminds me of what I used to see my grandmother doing all the time. And I think it's part of why I get into entrepreneurship. My grandmother was a seamstress by trade. So people would bring stuff for her to make and fix and that sort of stuff. But then my grandmother used to go down in town to the boat and get bananas, and she would sell bananas. She used to go on the palm tree and take off the palm leaves and make the palm brooms and go around and sell those. And sweep the backyard, yes. She used to make this thing called fudge, and everybody in the neighborhood want fudge, especially around harvest time at church. She can make 2-3 batches of fudge and all sell off because it tastes real good. So she used to...
So you know how to make fudge, right?
I don't have a clue.
Oh.
I know to eat it, but I don't have a clue. And she used to put her hand in so many little things that she always had some little income coming in some way, form, or fashion. And I think that is part of what ingrained in me, hey, work for yourself, put your hand to the plow, do something, and make things happen. Yeah, because she really did that.
A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand with the diligent makes rich. And that's what your grandmother.
Granny.
She
Come true,
didn't
Patrick. Come true.
She did not let anything go to waste. She didn't let any time pass. She always made sure she was busy, right? So she monetized whatever she could do. And that's basically what we have to look at in these times.
Yes, I am in total agreement. And oftentimes we tell persons, if you need some more money, go get a part-time job. But what if you can't get a part-time job? But there are ways to monetize your gifts and abilities. And like, for example, you can find ways to make passive income. There are persons who love to sit down and watch YouTube videos. How about you create your YouTube videos in what you like to do and where you see a need? If you like to cook, create a cooking channel. If you like to sew, show persons how to sew stuff. We have a young lady among us who paints rocks. She could create a YouTube video to show persons how to do arts and craft, which is not my thing at all. Arts and craft and music I struggle with all the time, even though I can sing really well. I see the collective sigh here in the sanctuary on the stage, but I'm gonna move on. But you can sell new or used items in your home. You know, what about that juicer that you bought years ago and you said you were going to do all the things with, and it's still there, you haven't used it? There are pawn shops who would take new and used items. There are things that you can put on Facebook and Instagram, where you can advertise what you have to make more money. Look for things in your home that you are not using, and I don't want persons to shoot me on this, but gifts that you receive that you're not using, you can even look to make some money off of. I promise you, as long as it's not like a wedding ring or anything, right? Create a blog, sign up to promote products and services for persons. They actually will send you material and you can make money off of it. Put your photography on the website, on iStock and Shutterstock and stuff, where persons can actually pay you for photographs that you take. And the other one is that you can definitely create small groups and find out what persons need, and then look, hey, charge a fee. For financial advice, yes, that's me.
And then too, in terms of
Fantastic.
charging, sorry, I was just saying in terms of charging the fee, everything doesn't have to be, granted in terms you have to look at your time and how much it costs, but everything doesn't have to be the most expensive. If you've got something, depending on what it is, and you've got it reasonably priced, you can have volume that makes up for the lower price. So if you wanted, you say you end up charging $50 and then only two people show up, but you charge 15 and it's more accessible to persons, then you would have the volume and then go from there. Then eventually you can always then decide either diversify what you're offering or increase the price depending on what you give, but not to just be all out in terms of looking in terms of getting the most with the least.
I also agree, and I will to the same thing. You can actually create an online course too. I will write an ebook if you want, but you can create online courses for specific things that are specific to the area that God has given you the ability to do.
Yeah, I love those examples. But what if I don't have one other gifting in my little finger that I can use? I know one of the things both Aisha and Sheena was discussing is that if you feel like you don't have a gift that you can monetize, you can actually look at that thing called your credit card and make it work for you. Or you can actually save money by paying your bills earlier. So either Aisha or Sheena, would you like to tell us how exactly do I use a credit card to save? How do I shop sales and save?
Most credit cards now have bonus points, they have miles, they have rewards. So if you're using your credit card in that way, then it can actually pay for itself because there are usually annual fees. Most persons would use their credit cards responsibly because a credit card can put you in a lot of trouble because the interest rate on a credit card sounds really nice, 1.97% a month, but that
By
works out to
12.
be 20
By 12.
almost 24% annually. So it can be very expensive. So persons will want to use their credit card responsibly. So where you know that you can use your salary or whatever income to clear that balance or to clear the majority of it, you want to use your credit card for that. But shop in bulk, as Sheena said, use your credit card wisely. And I want to also add in here, use your debit card wisely, because that action that we get when you just use the debit card, that happened to me before. I was using it so freely. I went to the ATM. I was like, somebody's robbing me. But I was using it so freely and not conscious of how much I was spending. And this was around the Christmas time, and that can get you in trouble as well. So, but you can use your credit cards and pay them on time to avoid late fees, because that can eat into whatever savings you are trying to get. If you have a $75 a month late fee and you pay late every month, I mean, that is money that you could use, and that is money that you could save.
With regards to the credit card, it's a matter of, again, when you're shopping, look and see who's offering what kind of interest rate. See if it is something with a lower rate. What are the benefits? Look and see in terms of the credit card, right? In terms of the benefits, and then also if it is that you've got a card, try to clear if you can, clear what it is before the statement date, because once it's cleared, cleared, and financial institutions will try to get technical. Cleared as in the money is received and applied before the date. Not that you drop it off the Friday in the drop box and it can get put on the Monday, you can still be late. So apply to the account, it means then that if you do it by the statement date, when the system runs to check the interest, it's not there. Or you can make sure that whatever you spend within the month, you clear that. So even if you've got a running balance, make sure it's something that you clear the following month. But again, it all goes back to knowing your numbers.
I want to add to that too,
Fantastic.
from a business
Oh, go ahead,
perspective.
Leslie. Sorry.
Because as a business person, you're always, like, for me, I'm always shopping. So yes, you have to look for deals. You get a chance to use your credit card. Make sure you have a credit card that's going to give you rewards or cash back. But then as an entrepreneur, you can also look for websites that are going to give you cash back just for using that website to shop or being referred from that website to shop. So there are a lot of little tools out there that you can use to really keep the cash coming in a different way.
And then also I want to add, outside of the credit card and savings, there's some bills that come with this early date. And some persons do ignore it and just be like, I just paid that bill. How they could want me to pay it again? But chuddy the early date. The light and power, you can get at least I think it's about 5% discount. So if your bill is on average like 100, that's $5 you could save. $5 a month, you be like, meh. Man, that's no $5 by 12 is 60. What you could do with $60? So those things that is you gotta look at in terms of the date, pay your bills on time, so then you can avoid the late fee. If it is that you know you're going in for a facility, something that I learned when I was younger, I automatically did it because I'm like, I am not going for. When I got my first card when I was traveling, I made sure that I collected the card after payday, because I was like, there's no way I'm collecting something and they want to start it before I get paid. So then it meant then that my payday for the card was always after I got paid. And that's what gets persons into trouble, because then they go and collect facilities, etc. Depending on how the system is set up. Some companies will just have it automatically at the 20th or 30th of the month, you're fine. But if something goes based on the date, then you're in trouble, because they will still charge you. I had a member who came and I was looking at their bank statement, and I could not understand why they were getting this late fee every month. And I'm like, why are you paying the bank this money? She's like, but I collected the loan, say like the 20th of the month. Obviously, because that's when it was finished and they went ahead. So the loan started the 20th, but they're paid on the 25th. So every month, the system is automatically charging them a late fee, even though their payroll is coming through. As I say, it depends on your financial institutions, because there may be some institutions that even if the payroll comes late, they will, what we would say plainly is backdated to the 28th, so that you're not charged the interest. What other finance institutions, their systems may not be able to carry something as such, and it automatically charges it. So be conscious of those things when you're looking at going into facilities, and read the fine print. What we will say, look at the loan bond or the credit card bond, the statement, whatever it is that you're signing off. See what it says, so that you're aware of what you're getting into. Don't just sign because you're happy because you're getting the funds. Read the things in detail, because it's technically a legal document.
What Sheena is describing is basically what we call like revenue leakage. It's the same premise as if you got a leaky pipe. You keep on dripping, you can find that your water bill can be going up and you can be spending extra money that you're not supposed to spend. Those are the sort of things that you look at to try and tighten up the ship to make sure that you're not just losing money without getting some sort of value back for it. So what Sheena and everybody else is saying is something that basically any person that is looking at trying to maximize their finances, or if any, like myself, those are the sort of things I would talk to my clients about to try and help them, find more disposable income that they can put things in place.
Plug the holes.
For example, you said let the money work for you. So, Sheila, when you say about the loan facility, it's done on the 20th, but then you get paid on the 28th. That's almost like the financial institution allowing their money to work for them. They're making money off of us, when technically it should be the other way around. Take the time to read the fine print. And then Patrick introduces a new phrase for us, revenue leakage, something we do not want. I just want to acknowledge everyone in the chat. It's rounding the hour. It's 7:55 p.m. You guys have Kevin laughing. BBAs is saying these are things we should teach our kids from early. Roberta says it's very practical. And Kirk, big shout out to Kirk Miller. Patrick, he agrees with you. He says doctors do not get business training related to managing their offices during their course of study. And he's saying since he was in training, that hasn't happened, and he's not sure if it has changed. Dion says most of us struggle with it because they have too much compassion, and patients are struggling financially. And patients are struggling, doctors are struggling as well. And so there has to be that bartering, that trading, etc. That Aisha was speaking about, and Sheena was speaking about earlier. It may not be exchanging money, but it may be exchanging goods and services. So I want to move on to debt management and investing because obviously the information you guys are giving us, we would assume that we were all starting on a level playing field. Perhaps we had excess money that we can now put to use for us, etc. But many of us are already in debt and we're saying, oh my goodness, COVID has come, it has impacted us. And now we need to figure out how we move on from here. The country is reopening, businesses restarting, the institutions, even though they would have given us a moratorium, they're still asking for their money and we're still paying interest. So how do we start digging ourselves out of this monumental debt and start investing? So Aisha, I want to come to you and ask you, has COVID-19 impacted individuals and companies in such a way that it seems as if they cannot recoup or they cannot rebound from the pandemic?
Yes, thank you, Sasha. COVID has caused a crisis for many when it comes to cash flow. Like, how do you flow when you have no cash, right? It's reduced hours, layoffs, persons being redundant. It has caused a lot of stress for many. And when debt becomes a stressor for you, how will you know if it's a stressor for you? First of all, you have to spot if it is. If you're not eating, if you're not sleeping, if you're losing weight, if it's the only thing you can think about when you go to sleep at night, if it is causing you restless nights, trust me, we need to work on your debt to look and see what is going on here. One of the things that persons don't realize is that you are not alone in this, you know. Yes, you've had to wait for a little while for your national insurance check to come through and you don't know if you're going to be able to do anything, but you're not alone in this war. Money creates a lot of stress for everyone. Some persons are striving and thriving, you wouldn't believe it, and some persons definitely are struggling. So it is a mixed bag for both individuals and businesses. But the first thing is to know if your stress if your debt is a stress to you, take it to God. As Wesley said, everything that we have belongs to God. Everything is His. So He knows your financial situation and He also knows the solution. So take it to God in prayer and let Him show you what you need to do, and talk to someone who is trusted and who can understand what you're going through. That's the first thing. The second thing is to know how much you owe and to whom. If you cannot get a financial picture if you don't know what it is. Take out all of your balances, your receipts, your invoices, your statements, everything, and put it out on the table. Put it on the floor if you need to. But you need to know how much you owe and to whom so that you will have an idea of how much debt you have. Sometimes we don't realize that we are not in as much debt as we thought that we were, and we kind of be like, oh, well, it ain't as bad as I thought. And then sometimes it's a little worse. But you have to know what your financial picture looks like. Now, once you know how much you owe and to whom, contact your creditors to see what kind of financial assistance that you can have access to. Sheena will talk a little bit more about moratorium and interest, but talk to your creditors, because what COVID has done is that if you had bad financial practices before, it kind of magnified those. And if you had good financial practices before, it actually puts you in a better space. That doesn't mean you are not going to struggle, but it actually puts you in a better space. And she's, as I said, is going to talk about moratoria, but when you contact your bank asking for these things, and you are in debt you have not paid us for the last 9 months, what moratorium can I give you when you've been deferring my payments? You haven't been paying me. You're not eligible, right? So you talk to your creditors, see what they can do. If your biggest debt is a mortgage or rent, talk to your landlord, see if they can give you some ease. See if you can get a temporary and not the word temporary, increase in your credit card limit or your line of credit limit. See if debt consolidation is an option for you, to see if you can do that so that you have all of your bills in one place and can you have one manageable monthly payment. Another option is to stay away from what we will call quick financing, speedy financing. It is very convenient, easy to access. Actually, right now we have furniture companies sending you checks in the mail telling you it's so easy, come and get it. But then when you actually start to pay back, it puts a big dent in your cash flow and you never really even thought about it. But one of the things that you have to consider is something we call your debt service coverage. In other words, you do not want more than 40% of the income that you have going out to debt. It's the same thing as we have with our government when we talk about a debt service. service. You know, you do not want that that the majority of a dollar goes out to paying debt, because then how do you live? How do you do other things that you want to do? So that ratio is 40%. If you make $100, you don't want any more than $40 going towards paying debt, right? Because that $60 you have to live off of that. And oftentimes when you have reduced income, you're the first thing that goes on the back burner is debt. That is the first thing that goes. You can't pay it because you need to eat. And also, tithing continues. You may have reduced income, but you tithe on that too. It doesn't stop. Don't think that God is going to be like, yeah, you don't worry, you don't have to give me what I give to you. Tithing is a contract. It's an honoring God with what he gave us, 10% or whatever he places on your heart to give. Then the next thing is, once you have all of that, take better steps towards having a better financial future. We talked about budgeting before. Try to figure out what is priority from what is non-priority. You know, you have money, but you have school fees to pay. Somebody's gonna need a pair of shoes coming up at the end of this month because the shoes are busting out. The car that you love so much is breaking down all the time. You know, and these are expenses that you're not looking for, but things come up all the time, especially when you say, man, I saved $500, I feel so fussy. And then you go like, so the person that you just hit upside the road there, you got to pay to repair the car. It costs $500. So you must have some kind of money and make sure you budget and try to stick to it. It requires discipline, but it pays off in the end.
Yeah. Sheena, do you want to talk about more before we go to Patrick and Wesley?
Okay. I will do the moratorium, but I want to just add something then in terms of Aisha and the saving. In terms of putting the money aside, is if it is that you know it's hard for you to save, remember to have something that's automated, like come out to your salary automatically. Yeah. As I said before, put it on an account that doesn't have an ATM card. Put it somewhere, then put it, I know like for some parents, if they put it on the account for their child or for godparents, their godchild, they're less likely to take it off. Do that. Whatever it is going to take you to having something to in case when it rains, because like Aisha said, it would be the car, and then from the car, then it goes to the washing machine, and then who washing by hand, and then what? There's a gentle cycle for a reason, and then
more groceries because you saving money in transportation and not spending gas to send your children to school, but they're at home and eating more often. Yes. I know the grocery bill going.
Yes. So all those things in terms of be considered. What I would say in terms of the moratorium, because I think some persons misunderstood what it was. They thought that, most people thought that they did not have to pay. What the moratorium did is that it deferred your payment. So how I can put it in terms is like they carry forward the date so it don't look like you're behind, but the interest still there accumulating. I think that's the simplest way you could put it. So the months that you didn't pay, then the system would have been adjusted. So instead of saying that you owed in March, they carried it forward 6 months to say you owe in September. But it still meant that from March to September, the interest was still accumulating. And then especially for persons who would have a larger amount, especially when you start talking mortgages with hundreds and thousands of dollars, that deferral of payment or cumulative interest is going to take you some time to catch back up on. Because if anybody who's had a mortgage with the first month, they know that your payment of $1,500 could almost be only $200 to principal, depend on what it is. Yes. And it's quite depressing. But again, I still think you should know your numbers. So is that you know what it is you're working towards or what you're looking at getting started. If it is that you know from the accumulative interest, what then steps you can make in terms of getting that started in terms of going forward. So that you're not disheartened when you see the mortgage balance the same way for a year. Know that you're looking at getting the interest done and what you can do. Again, looking at your cupboard, what is that you can do to cut. Sometimes even if it's something as simple as normally on a mortgage, something as simple as $100 or $200 can cut years off your mortgage each month. If it's somebody who, like you would get, like, say like Patrick, if you know you get your bonus, you may get your bonus, or you got a client that normally comes in at the end of the year for a big contract. When that money comes, put it aside and put it towards the mortgage, so then you're starting to catch up that way. Know your numbers. Know your numbers.
Thank you, Sheena and Aisha. Guys, it is 8:05 already, and we do have a curfew in us. and we don't want our money working at Her Majesty's prison or
Correct.
courthouse. So I'm going to come to Patrick and Wesley. Wesley, I want to ask you what, based on tonight, I like how you spoke about your granny and the way she improvised and she had her hands in everything and the impression she would have made on your life to go into entrepreneurship. What is one of the biggest financial lessons being a business owner? And Patrick, you to tell us your role as a financial services certified professional and insurance advisor, particularly as it links to legacy and estate planning.
Okay. In my role, my first meeting with my client is basically a get to know. Basically, I get to know them to find out if there's someone that has the set of mindset that will be interested in the service I will provide. They get to know me to decide if I'm someone who is actually qualified to speak to them about their financial plans. My goal is to find out what their life aspirations are, what they're working towards, where they would like to see themselves in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, even if I am not there. But my job is to basically help them become more financially sophisticated so that if they are young enough that perhaps with the sort of timeline we're looking at, I may not be here anymore, they will be well on their way to be able to handle their finances themselves. So what I do is to find out, okay, so you're into home ownership. You want to own your own home in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Do you see yourself as someone that is going to want to have a family, right? Are you someone that's interested? Right now, you might be in a 9 to 5, not 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 a.m., but basically working for someone else. But you have a gift that you can monetize and you want to go into entrepreneurship. All those sort of things I have to know because my aim is to basically let you show me where it is that you want to go, right? And then my job is to come alongside you and look down that same path with the financial experience and expertise that I have and to be able to identify the risks, the potholes that you didn't see, the man that come around the corner there without holding his side, that sort of thing financially, and to be able to help you put things in place, not only to help you get there, but also to help you secure your plans to protect yourself against those unforeseen things. And my job is basically not necessarily looking at you totally, but also looking at those that are coming behind you, if that is what your onus is that is what your main interest is in. Because to be honest, it's not everyone that's interested in anybody else other than themselves, which is not necessarily my preferred client, but there is that person that are just interested in making sure that they make their life comfortable, make sure that they have a comfortable, financially secure retirement. But then the persons I really love to deal with are those persons that have someone else that they love, and they want to make sure that, yes, they want to have a purposeful, useful, and comfortable existence, but they want to help the person coming behind them, their child or their grandchild, be able to take a step up above where they started from. And I try to build that base for my clients.
Sasha, could you ask the question again for me? Because you were cutting out. So if you could ask again, please.
Sure, no problem. What is one of the biggest takeaways you would have gotten, at least up until now as an entrepreneur? One of the biggest life lessons you could share with us?
Oh, one of my biggest life lessons. Well, being an entrepreneur was a pretty tough path. At one point in time, both myself and my wife were entrepreneurs. So finances in the house were very interesting. I guess one of the biggest takeaways for me as an entrepreneur is that you need to be continually learning. And it's not just for me to continually learning about my craft, which is important, but the aspect of finances. Going into entrepreneurship, I did not really have a clue. Just like Patrick was saying, the doctors go in, and my craft is similar to being a doctor. I'm just a doctor for computers and electronics. And we really didn't know I didn't really know what I was doing in terms of business side of things. I never really want to be an entrepreneur. I just want to be somebody who fixes things for people and leave it at that. But now there is the whole administrative side and dealing with employees and all of that sort of stuff. And my biggest takeaway is continual learning. So I have had to delve into a lot of financial resources and learning how businesses deal with finances and learning how some of the rich guys move their money around so that I know now the best ways for me to do stuff. And that has been one of my great things to take away from entrepreneurship, to be a continual student of the craft, not just for what I physically do, but to keep the money flowing and make it work better for me.
Okay, great. So it's just about 8:11, so we are going to start wrapping up. Final question for the panelists. Is there such a thing as good debt? And then you can round out the discussion on what you would like to leave our audience with this evening.
Yes. Everyone looks at me, but yes, there is such a thing as good debt. The thing about debt, a lot of persons say you shouldn't buy a vehicle. And we had this discussion in our preparatory session. You shouldn't buy a vehicle. A vehicle is bad debt because it depreciates. You should only get a mortgage because it appreciates. COVID showed persons that the value of their house can also depreciate, right? So let's not think that debt is bad. The mismanagement of debt is bad. Just like how the Bible doesn't tell us that alcohol is bad, it tells us that drunkenness is the sin, not alcohol itself. It's the same thing. Mismanagement of debt is where it becomes a problem. If you have a craving for more and more debt, then we have an issue. And there are some persons who cannot stand the thought of debt because they want to be debt free. That is an excellent way to look at it. And then there are some persons who don't mind. They'll borrow from you, they'll borrow here, they'll borrow there, they'll borrow there. And then when you try to tell them that you need to slow down, they'll be like, okay, well, you're helping me, let me go and see who can. So they have this thirst for debt all the time. And it becomes a case where you cannot live if you have too much debt on you. Persons use vehicles all the time for deliveries, for their goods and services, to make cash flow, for rentals. You need a vehicle. You cannot go at the bus stop and carry your roof, right? You just cannot do it. Somebody had to get that vehicle, whether it's the government or whether it's a private entrepreneur, right? So let's get away from moving to thinking that there are only certain debts that are good and certain debts that are bad. Debts help us to acquire assets that we need, right? So we have to ensure that we honor those debts as we get them, and then we acquire more assets. That is the honest truth. But debt is good. All debt is good, and I will say that all debt is good. It is the mismanagement of debt that is bad.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Aisha on that one. The mismanagement of debt is what's bad. And I'll go back to something she said where she used the Bible verse that talks about the lender being the borrower being slave to the lender, right? And that is something that I have thought about a lot. And one of the things I ask myself is, what if I'm the person lending myself the money, right? So I didn't really want to give away tips tonight, but if you have an abundance of cash and you don't know what to do with it, if you can get a fairly high interest earning account on a bank, you can put that money on there and it's going to earn interest. And then you just borrow the bank's money. So now you're in debt to the bank, yes, but if you're managing it well, your money is growing while you're spending the bank's money and making money off of that. So you got to be careful how you use your debt and make sure you manage it well.
In principle, I agree with both Aisha and Wesley that debt in itself is not bad. But if your debt you're using debt to fuel consumption, meaning that it is not really working, if you're using it to buy assets that or not even assets, just things that you're just consuming, then no, that's not good. What you should do is be using your debt to either buy a long-term tangible asset, land, house, that sort of stuff. And there's another thing too, Aisha, you're correct. We Bajans have always come along hearing that property appreciates. That is cultural. That's not really, there's no real
Global.
economic basics in
That's
that.
global.
Because a house depreciates. I mean, the fact that it's got changed, the shingles or the galvanized and all that sort of stuff, and we have enough, well, don't let me go down that road, but we've seen instances where buildings have once were nice and now they're sick buildings. So you know that really and truthfully, everything has a useful life, so it depreciates. Where you were correct also is that you can try and use your money to work for you, but why you have to caution, the banks, there's a reason why banks stay in business, because they do not ever pay more interest than they take. What I would tell you that I've learned from my time in banking is that high net worth people that have a lot of cash lying around, they become banks as well too. You have people that have cash to spare that will get a lawyer to drop a very good loan note or a loan contract. And if you're an employee or somebody that knows them and you want to buy a car, you can go to them. And they will be maybe easier for you to get the money from them than another bank.
Become a lender.
And they become a lender, and therefore their money really works for them. So I understand what you're saying. Back in the day when the interest rates were a lot higher, you probably could have done that, put your money with them and then borrow from them and not take too much of a hit. But no, the rates of interest now can make that really, really difficult to do. So yes, Aisha, it's not debt itself is bad, it's the misuse of debt, like anything else.
I agree in terms of the debt, that it is a misuse of that, and everything is, as I keep on saying, is know your numbers. What it is that is going on, the interest rate, how much it is, and all of that. Because if it is that, no, but most people won't have $100,000 sitting down on their account to go in terms of purchasing land. What they may have, if they've saved, is a deposit. So they may have not even 10,000 as the 10%, but 20,000 as 20% of the funds, which means then now they borrow less. And they have, in terms of borrowing less, it may mean then you, depend on your financial, you may not have to then have an additional cost like life insurance for the land loan, because it's a short-term loan, because it's 15 years or 10 years, compared to if you had to borrow the 100,000 or the 150,000, because of the magnitude of the loan, you would definitely have to have the insurance as as additional coverage. So it's a matter of what it is, and as Patrick said, not in terms of consuming. If it is that you have, if it is that the washing machine goes bum, and it is that you have to get the washing machine. Some people may still say, I have a friend who still believes in hand washing. She's a very special young lady. But she literally still hand washes her clothes. But then for others, is it going to be an inconvenience? So then if it is that you, again, if you save, you can probably put down, if the machine is $1,500, you can probably put down $500. And then for the next 3 months, pay off the other $1,000. So you've gotten it at cash price by paying it off in 3 months versus having it for the 12, 24, or 36 months in terms of what the higher purchase may offer. And again, look at what everything totals. You're saying, man, that's only some for persons, especially for persons who are paid weekly. I find that the numbers don't register for them as much, because like, well, that's only $25 a week. That's $100 in a 4-week month, and that's $125 in a 5-week month. That's add up. And then then for some pay slips, I would see they got like 3 higher purchases. One is 25, one is 30, and then another 20. And they're like, that's a week. So when you got a month, so knowing your numbers, and then not, if you can avoid that, you avoid it, and make sure it's not something then that's only going to be something that you can just, as they say, extend consumer. Some persons will say that they have to have a TV, but does it have to be 50 inches? I am being really practical. If the television has gone, it has gone by my dad.
70 actually, not 50. Sorry.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, 70.
Whole wall. Right. I mean, if it is that you're someone who enjoys television as entertainment for you and the children, well, fine. But if at the point in time it's gone by and you can afford the 32-inch, which can still show, and everybody can still sit close together and still see the screen, do that until you can save, until you can get the ideal TV. And if you wait until, because normally stores will have sales in January, because the Christmas stock that they had that was at 4,000, by January they want to get rid of it, is at 15 or 2. So if you just wait a couple of months, the same 50-inch slash 70, that would have never cost you a mortgage payment, can cause you half a mortgage payment if you just wait a couple of months.
Delayed gratification.
It's true.
Guys, I want to thank you guys so much for this discussion tonight. So I'm going to try to summarize what you said because we have to wrap up. Change our mindset. Reclaim practices that have been tested in old-time days. Speak about money. Make it plain. Be disciplined. Make your money work for you. Budget is how we say, know your numbers. Management is key. Delayed gratification. Sheena Bowen, Aisha Makeup, Wesley Martelli, and Patrick Moore. Thank you so much. This evening, listeners, we want to challenge you to make your money work for you. The key is to invest in surplus, as Aisha said, to save, as Sheena advised, get financial guidance, Patrick offers, and to plan ahead from Wesley. All of this information that God has a plan for us as economic folk with Him. So even now, we just want to pray that everyone on the sound of my voice will be blessed to be a blessing, empowered for abundant living, that we will maintain our activity in producing wealth, we will maintain integrous financial contracts, and create an economic culture that reflects the nature of God. God, help us to continue being voices of hope, models of Christ's love, and agents of change in every societal pillar. We pray, God, that you will continue to bless and keep everyone safely. If anyone on tonight does not have a relationship with you, God, and would like to establish one, we pray for acknowledgement of their past sins. We pray for their repentance, and we pray for forgiveness. And pray that they will acknowledge Christ as the Son of God and make provision for the Holy Spirit be their guide. We'd like to take opportunity to extend an invitation to our Sunday morning worship experience to you. For more information on how you can join us on Sunday, just like our page on Facebook, Hope Church Official, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your host, Dr. saying thank you, good night, go in peace, and serve the Lord.